Hey everyone, I'd like to introduce you to actually the very first book that I wrote and published. It's called Kingdom Communication. You probably can't read it, it's backwards in the film. This little book is, I think, $7 or $8 on Amazon. It's not very big, it won't take you very long to get through. The pages are very small. This book subtitle is How to Engage in Discussion with Your Fellow Image Bearer. It's really a book that comes from my heart, comes from one of the first stages of kind of spiritual development that I encountered, and that was teaching for a small college up in Minnesota called Rivendell Five Pursuits Honors Program. It was a basic college program where you paired 2 professors with 25 students all the way through the first 2 years of college. You just did it in 16 months because you didn't take a summer break. It was classical, it was Christian, it was seminar based, and it was really quite radical, and really loved the program. I feel like it was almost a master's because I had to teach through every single subject, all the 12 subjects of the liberal arts. So in 4 semesters, Theos, Cosmos, Anthropos, and Ethnos semesters, and those broke down into critical thinking, theology, philosophy, mathematics, physical science, biology, and then into psychology, sociology, fine arts. You go to Italy for 5 weeks, Rome, Florence, and Venice, study fine arts there, and then you move up to you move on to government, law, economics, and cap it off with human story, with literature. So that was the whole program. And after finishing that program, I kind of had to process what I had learned, and throughout that time I reached about the 10,000 hours mark of leading seminar discussions and on about anything. And so and what I came to understand was growth in the Christian life obviously happens in community, but it also happens through learning as well, whether it be through studying the Bible or other things, and obviously through prayer and just in general maturity. But I found that so much is learned by communicating in a kingdom way. And so it's kind of an old school term. There were a bunch of books published on kingdom stuff back in the day and back in my parents' generation. But there's something about it, and that's a little bit of what I'm starting to get at, and I hit on it, in the preface. This basic idea that we live in a democracy, we live in a republic, democratic republic, but we have leaders called presidents these days, where we vote, and we kind of have a say as to who gets to lead us or who gets to rule us. But that's not how the Bible presents God. God isn't a president. God is actually a king. He's King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And so what is this thing called a kingdom, and what is this thing called a king, and what does it mean to be loyal subjects of the king, and how do we communicate as kingdom image bearers? I tend to find that discussion is one of the most effective ways of communicating amongst each other, learning and growing. One of the most effective means of education, largely dismissed in our lecture-based telling-based approach to education. And so coming out of St. John's, I've really valued seminar and lecture-based, discussion-based learning. And so where you read something and you encounter something, even if it is a lecture or preaching or whatever, and then let's talk about it. So a two-way street instead of a one-way street, and because I can lecture all day long, I can do a video all day long, but until I actually hear where you're coming from, we're probably not going to learn very much. I mean, I might be an expert at XYZ, but until I connect and learn how to engage with you, you're probably not going to learn very much. And so, just an important form of education, and I found it to be very, very helpful, specifically in the Christian life. Obviously, megachurches do small groups, right? But who in your small group is very good at actually leading a discussion? Because it doesn't mean somebody's just talking for a while. It means that we're actually asking good questions of each other, and we're learning and engaging together. So that's what the book begins to cultivate. So half of it's all about discussion, because there's not really that much written on discussion. There is some, more so these days. There are actually quite a few books being published now on Socratic learning. I would argue seminar and Socratic learning is not explicitly what Plato is doing in his dialogues. In other words, it's a little bit different thing, but Plato is obviously and Socrates are masters at asking good questions. That's what you want to learn about. But my contention is that Jesus was also a master at asking questions. And oddly enough, if you go through the entire Bible, and reflect on the questions that are being asked, we learned so much about questions and reflecting and meditating on questions. So again, Jesus asked 211 questions throughout the Gospels. It's phenomenal to just go through and underline and highlight every single question that Christ asked. It's amazing. So that's another element of this. But the other element is a reflection on my journey through that Rivendell program. They're now called Created Education. They're over in North Carolina and Black Mountain. You can check them out. Same program for the first 2 years, and then you do more entrepreneurial stuff afterwards. But that's what this book is about. And so the journey of 12 discussions led by a guide is really based on just some highlights of readings encountered in that program, and that you can just go find these books on your own, and I identify them in here. But that's the second part of the book. And so the intent of this book is actually to get a group of friends together and read this book together. Whether it be in a couple of sittings, or whether you want to be a little bit more intentional about reading some of the readings and then having like 12 discussions on those readings. This will help you. This is intended to just simply be a guide to help you work through those discussions. But the sources, for example, by the way, how did you walk into Barnes & Noble or go on Amazon? You can't really do it very well on Amazon, but you can a little bit. Walk into Barnes & Noble, deciding you want to buy a book. How do you evaluate a book as to whether you want to buy it or not? Front cover, back cover, table of contents. That's how you evaluate any book as to whether it's worth buying or not. All right? Front cover, back cover, table of contents. Front cover always has author, title, and some image. This is a terrible image. Back cover normally has some sort of description of the book, some sort of endorsements, and then who the author is, like a picture or bio or whatever. And you can see those things. And then you go to the table of contents. The table of contents has it's just an outline. If you've done outlines in writing before, it's just an outline of what the book is about. And so I also really enjoy, it's my favorite thing ever, is to pick up a book and to go at it backwards. So I'm going to do that with you. It's really fun. It kind of leads up to the crescendo, right, of seeing what the book is about. You kind of go at it backwards. You get to see their sources and all that stuff. But there it is. So sources from Os Guinness to Schaefer to to Lincoln, Lathrop, Dickinson, etc. Right? The themes, that's a nice snapshot of what the themes are that you would be exploring in this book, all the way from journey, God, education, pain, calling, art, culture, citizenship, flourishing, etc. Call attention to, and then guidelines. This is actually worth its weight in gold. These, if you're a teacher or if you want, or a pastor or whatever, and you want to learn how to lead discussions and learn some guidelines, obviously reach out to me, classicaleducationconsulting.com. But you can check out these guidelines. So we have guidelines for discussions. This is page 116. Guidelines for discussion, guidelines for questions, and guidelines for guides. These little distillations are so helpful, and stuff I've just encountered over the years of teaching seminar. You just learn a thing or two, right? And so enjoy those. The last chapter on ambition gets a little bit at kind of the heart of the book, but the conclusion is called On the Ambition of Christians, and it's set up in kind of disputation way. Aquinas's medieval form of disputation, kind of set up in that form. But if you go to the end, what is ambition or godly ambition? This is page 114. Godly ambition must be embraced through image-bearing, honor, and sacrifice. So a little reflection on kind of what the program called for. It was actually the graduation speech that I gave. If we're going through this program or if we're studying all these things, what is it that we're called to? And is it okay to be ambitious? Well, I would submit that it actually is okay to be ambitious, that we just have to be ambitious in a godly way. And that means really just seeking to attain those words, well done, good and faithful servant, enter into the joy of the master, right? Just, that's what godly ambition is all about. So that's the conclusion. And then you have a whole chapter on the landscape items of the Journey in Human Flourishing. So I used to run this Journey in Human Flourishing seminar where it was just a group of readings, about 600 pages worth of readings, which are referenced, which is what you can go and find and read along the way. But through every single one of those 12 liberal arts, all from a Christian perspective, and reflecting on what does this mean? How do you learn and grow as a Christian through the 12 college liberal arts subjects? And so what it ends up being is kind of a tour through, like an overlook of the kingdom of God and the cosmos and the universe that God has set up. What would it mean? Like if you could walk up to an overview of the entire universe, of the kingdom of God, what would be some landmarks that you would point out? Like, I don't know, if you're going to Garden of the Gods in Colorado Springs and you go up to the balcony of the visitor center and you're looking out over the Garden of the Gods, you're pointing to certain areas there. That's what this book is trying to do. It's trying to point you to all the great subjects that you would study in college, or the things that have called human attention throughout the centuries. What should we be reflecting on? What are the landmarks? What's the towers over there? What's this field over here, etc.? That's what this book is trying to call attention to. And so so for example, mathematics, right? Really, what's Christian about mathematics? Well, mathematics is not value neutral. And what I've done is distill what a lot of mathematicians, Christian mathematicians, and even atheistic mathematicians, what they have distilled, or the big questions that they ask that are value laden. And those are listed out on page 74, also worth its weight in gold. these 2 pages right here, this outline, right? Certain questions you can ask of mathematics to begin to cultivate and see where are the values in mathematics. It's amazing. What is the foundation to mathematics? God, no God, absolute, relative? What's the faculty to know mathematics? Is mathematics a priori or a posteriori? Is it logical or is it intuitive? Huge debates over this by mathematicians, whether mathematics is logical or intuitive, and what does that mean, right? From a human nature perspective, and really from an Imago Dei perspective. Where does mathematics exist? Does it exist in the mind of God, in the mind of man? Does it just exist out there in the natural or physical world? Was mathematics created? Where did number 1 come from? What is mathematics for? And does mathematics include history and culture and ethics and beauty? Of course it does. Just dive into anything and you'll begin to see where these things, where these questions arise. So that's just a brief introduction there for that. And then there's some topics in around page 53 going forward. Those are just further topics to help discussion and cultivate good questions. And then there's a chapter on what is discussion, so you can read through that chapter and even check out some of my other videos where I talk about discussion. But in fact, you can download this chapter, The Brave Art of Discussion, on my website, Classical Education Consulting. But this is the definition of discussion. Discussion is, or a discussion most purely, this is page 51, a discussion most purely will begin with a question and proceed with the 2 values of loving the text, the author, and loving your neighbor, listening, while discovering and seeking answers and questions to the initial question, right? If you go through this journey where you're talking about the 12 different landmarks in the kingdom of God, then you're going to be cultivating discussion and listening to your neighbor there. Wheatstone Ministries defines a discussion as 2 or more people seeking a single unknown truth together. That's a really nice go-to definition of discussion. But however it is, you have to cultivate it. You have to learn. It's not preaching. It's not didactic teaching. It's not direct, straightforward, one-way teaching. It's 2-way, and you have to be really good at listening to discussion, to your neighbor with that. So God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So the final, last thing I'll go over is just read the last paragraph or so of the preface. Back to like, we live in a presidential nation right now that's elected. Well, what is the kingdom of God? Well, we don't elect a king. God is king, whether we like it or not. And so what that means is just like we have statesmen and citizens in this country, well, the kingdom of God has citizens as well, right? And so kingdom statesmanship, this is page 9, kingdom statesmanship takes the basic identity of kingdom citizenship to the next level. Both are needed. All must be at least honored citizens. Some will be statesmen, women. The kingdom of God on this earth is in desperate need of all of the above. The rest of this book will be about communication of citizenship. Kingdom communication as discussion is a needed model for effective orientation in the kingdom of God, right? So that is what this book is about. The book is intended as a follow-up to all the great apologetics resources we have out there today. But at the end of the day, demolishing your neighbor or that person on the street with arguments for the existence of God or whatever it is can be helpful, but more helpful is the long-term relationship and cultivating with your neighbor, your next door neighbor who you live beside, how do you get to know them, and how do you ask good questions of them, and how do you have important discussions on whether it be origin, identity, meaning, morality, destiny, etc. Those are the questions you want to ask. And this book, Kingdom Citizenship, How to Engage in Discussion with Your Fellow Image Bearer, will just be a helpful tool along the way. Hope this helps. Again, you can get the book. It's tiny little book off Amazon for around $7, or get a Kindle reading for even cheaper. Reach out if you have any questions. classicaleducationconsulting.com. My name is Jason. We'll look forward to hearing how this book is helpful in your life and in your church's life or in your school's life, etc. Have a great day.